Good morning, everyone. My name is Drew Wilby. I'm the Executive Director of Communications for the Ministries of Justice and the Ministry of Corrections and Policing. This morning I'm here representing the Office of the Chief Coroner in the province of Saskatchewan. Late last night we were made aware that an unfortunate error had occurred in the identities of two of the individuals involved in the tragic Humboldt Broncos collision that occurred on Friday. I want to start by passing on our sympathies and our condolences to everyone involved in this tragic situation. We've seen from the vigil last night that the city of Humboldt has rallied together, the province has rallied together, the country and even the world has rallied together. But the most affected are the team, are the kids, the staff, the parents, the families, and our thoughts go out to them. So as I said, late last night we were made aware of an error that had occurred in the identification of two of the individuals. As you will have seen in a news release this morning, Xavier LaBelle, who had previously been confirmed deceased, is not deceased, he is alive. And unfortunately that means that Parker Tolman has been confirmed to be deceased. We've been in touch with the families, they're fully aware, and I want to thank them for their professionalism. I want to thank them for their support, and I want to thank them for their understanding, and I want to apologize to both of those families on behalf of the Office of the Chief Coroner and the Governor of Saskatchewan for the error that was made. I can speak to you a little bit about the process of identification and how that works, and it is just that. It is a process. It's not one individual that makes the identification decision. There is a lot of work that goes into that through, number one, identifying the survivors of an incident like this, looking at the level of trauma that was involved, and trying to determine who is who. A lot of these boys looked alike. They had the blonde hair that was supportive of their team for their playoff run. They're very similar builds. They're all very similar ages, and they're very athletic, of course, as they are junior A hockey players. As we look back on what occurred, and as we look back on those processes, we'll continue to assess the work that we do. But with that, I would turn this over to any questions that you may have.
And I guess how on earth is this just trauma from accident, Drew, where it's difficult to identify until someone can tell who they are?
And there's a lot of variables that go into that. There is, as you can imagine, with a collision of this nature, significant trauma. I can't speak to the situation of each individual, as that's personal health information, so I can't reveal that information, unfortunately, for you. But there are those variables to consider. And to be able to make that positive identification. I mean, the way to 100% confirm that is through dental records, and dental records take time. You have to get them from the location of wherever that dentist may be. These boys are from all over the prairies and into BC, so that would have taken some time. We went on the process we had established by talking to numerous agencies, numerous people, and believed that that positive identification had been done appropriately.
Billets been notified as well?
I believe everyone has been notified as of now. That's why we're having this news conference. That's why we sent out the release this morning. I have been in touch with the Broncos organization and the Mayor of Humboldt, and I want to thank both of them for their incredible professionalism in all of this and the work that they're doing. It can't be easy for them, and that was a tough phone call for me to talk to them this morning, but they have been notified, yes.
Drew, this tragic set of circumstances is obviously very unusual. We haven't seen something like this in our province for really ever. Is this an unusual thing that can happen when someone goes through a trauma such as this, that it could take time or a misidentification?
Yeah, the level of the trauma affecting these individuals, as well as as you've indicated, the sheer numbers. A few of us the other day, not that we want to do this, but we were trying to recall if there was an incident in recent memory that was similar to this, and no one can recall anything like this. And so the strain that puts on the resources you have, the strain that it puts on the coroner's office, and I do want to thank the coroners that have been on scene in Humboldt as well into Saskatoon and continue to be on scene in the work that they're doing and working with the families as well. It is difficult. It absolutely is difficult. And so, to answer the question fully, is this something that we've seen before? I would suggest probably not in Saskatchewan's recent history anyway.
I know you've apologized and had conversations, but what on earth do you really say in those conversations to these two families impacted by this, to spend however many hours thinking someone is alive when they're not, or dead when they're not?
I don't think anything you could ever say would be enough. I'm the father of 3 boys. You know, 2 have spent significant time on buses traveling this province. You know, and I can't even imagine putting myself in those families' shoes to first get the notice that their loved ones have been in a collision of this nature, and then, you know, to find out that who they had thought was their loved one wasn't potentially actually their loved one. I can't even fathom, and I don't think enough could ever be said. All I can do is offer our sincerest apologies, our sincerest condolences and sympathies, in particular to the Tobin family, on the news that they would have received yesterday, and hope that in some small fashion they're able to move on from this and find some level of closure.
Drew, at what point yesterday did you recognize the mistake, and was it dental records that allowed the coroner's office to recognize the mistake had been made?
I'm a little limited in what I can provide, because we are talking about a patient that's under the care of Royal University Hospital. But what I can tell you is that I was made aware late yesterday, sometime after the vigil had occurred, that I know everybody had tuned into to watch and to, you know, provide some level of closure. It was new information that was brought to light. It wasn't dental record related. And from there, of course, that kicked the process of figuring this all out into gear. We had a call with the Saskatchewan Health Authority, with the RCMP, with the Office of the Chief Coroner. Myself, I was involved in that, to first and foremost figure out what had occurred. Secondly, were we confident in the identities of all of the others, which we are. I can confirm for you, we are confident in the identities of all the others, both living and deceased. And then from there, you know, what needed to be done. And of course, we needed to make sure the families were looked after, first and foremost. From there, making sure that those that needed to know were made aware. The RCMP carried some of that for us early this morning. And then, of course, sending out the release to make sure that the public who are tuning in all across the globe are aware of what's going on as well. And then, of course, answering your questions here today.
Do you think that identifying the victims then was rushed, or, you know, to get to that point to have somebody confused, was it rushed?
In a situation like this, there's so many variables to account for. I mean, obviously, you want to make sure that those that are injured are looked after in hospital, that they have the supports they need, including their family supports around them, that those that have deceased, again, that their families are notified, that they're able to attend to their loved ones, and to make decisions that they need to make. You know, a process was followed that was fairly comprehensive. You know, there are multiple agencies and players involved in that, including consultation with the families. Families were able to, you know, to be a part of that. So I don't think it was rushed in this situation, in the sense that the families needed information. They needed information about who their loved ones were and what state they were in. Looking back on it, obviously, I mean, dental records are they are sort of that, you know, that 100% assurance. And so we'll look at that as we go forward in terms of identification. But, you know, I mean, the important thing is to get information into families' hands.
The other thing is, too, is because the family didn't initially know that their son was still alive, so they weren't able to see him in hospital, or they didn't know to go, or do you know what happened along those lines? Or
in terms of?
Well, it's just if you don't know your son is still alive and you were told he was deceased, you don't get to see him in hospital right after. That's pretty traumatic.
Yeah, you know, I can't speak a lot to the family. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to do so. If they want to speak on that, you know, I would encourage them to do so. But absolutely, I mean, to not be at their son's side right from the start would be incredibly traumatic. And you know, our thoughts go to them on that, because obviously that's something that you know, that potentially would have been prevented earlier.
Is any processes as a result of this going to change, or really, and because it's such an unusual set of circumstances that we don't see in this province, fortunately, very often, is it necessary to change them?
You know, we are confident in the process that we have. We'll always look at that, you know, as we go forward, and make determinations. You know, the coroner's office will look at that and make those determinations if they feel that they need to, and change that process. This is unprecedented in Saskatchewan's history, you know, and let's all pray that something like this never happens again, and we don't need to learn, you know, these lessons for, say, the next time. Having said that, we always need to prepare for the worst and make sure that we do have the proper processes in place, that we're equipped to deal with these things if and when they do occur in the province.
What can you say about Xavier Labelle's condition?
Due to the fact that he's an active patient at Royal University Hospital, I'm not able to say much. You know, that's all governed by health information, and I apologize for that. I know that's often a default of government to say because of privacy we can't say much. I truly mean that in this case. That would be up to his family to provide any information that they see fit there. So I'm sorry I can't provide much on his condition.
You
Okay.
thank
Sorry,
the family for their professionalism on the phone call. Can you elaborate on that?
Their understanding in all of this, I mean, it's been very clear to everyone involved. I think through the media reports that all of you folks are doing, as well as the vigil last night, watching the Humboldt Broncos organization, watching the city of Humboldt. This is a community. They're a family. These boys were a family. They rode that bus together day in, day out, traveling to games. Many of them live together in billets places. The shoulders that they each have offered for one another, the support that they've provided to each other, and their understanding, especially in light of, you know, this recent news. It's, you know, if I was ever in that situation, I wish that I would be like that.
Okay, sorry, is there anybody on the phone? I think you may have a hard time hearing, but is there anyone on the phone with a question? Hello? No questions from the phone?
Did the families know during the vigil or afterwards?
I don't have that level of detail at this time when they were officially informed of the error. I'm sorry about that.
Do you know if any of the families are in Saskatoon or where they're located right now?
In terms of these two specific families, you know, I think again, I can't speak to that. That's family privacy.
Hold on one second.
The RCMP, I understand, are going to release that quite quickly. That should be out in fairly short order. They'll update the information that came out yesterday that was joined between the Office of the Chief Coroner and the RCMP.
Sorry, I think the Humboldt radio station just was starting with a question. Can you hear us again?
I'm afraid the only question I have is we've been in the conference call and for some reason we cannot hear anything on this end. So if any other reporters would be so kind, please send the people of Humboldt at least the initial opening statement and some audio. That would be greatly appreciated. They could just forward it to the radio station here in Humboldt.
I'll do that.
The ministry can make sure that you get that as well.
We would really appreciate that because we're just not getting this audio feed.
Okay. Do you have a specific question you'd like Drew to answer?
Really, there's no question.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the phone?
What would you say to people who are hearing this news and fairly angered by it?
That would be an understandable reaction. It would be an understandable reaction. I would encourage them to understand that this is a process, that it's difficult on everyone involved, most difficult for the families and those directly affected, you know, absolutely. That our staff have been working hard on this, that they've been, you know, they've been trying to do the work that needs to be done and identify everyone. And it is unprecedented circumstances in the province's history to have this level of tragedy out of one incident. So I would encourage them to find some level of understanding on that, and hopefully that's enough for them.
Okay. I started to hear somebody on the phone say hello. Was there another question before we wrap up?
Hi, I'm sorry. This is Artemis from CNN. I wanted to know what was said because we don't know what question to ask if we don't know what was said.
The ministry can provide you the audio if you want to drop us an email. We can get that to you. We can make sure that everybody gets the audio who needs it as well. Do you have any specific questions?
Have the families that have been misidentified been informed of their loved ones, I guess, being alive?
Are you able to hear me on the phone?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. I apologize for the inability to hear there. That's sorry about that. Yes, the families have been notified. The families were aware last night. First and foremost in any of these situations is to ensure that the families have been notified and that they're aware of what's going to take place. The families were notified, of course, of the circumstances as well. They were made aware that we were going to be making this news public this morning.
And how was there an explanation given as to how the mix-up happened? Were families in the rooms with their loved ones and not able to identify the individuals, and is that what it was? Like maybe their faces were bandaged up. I'm just trying to understand.
I'm somewhat limited in what I can say there, and I'll explain this in this way, and that Canadian privacy laws are a little bit different than American privacy laws, and in particular, we're subject to two pieces of legislation in Saskatchewan, the Health Information Protection Act and the Freedom of Information Protection Act. And I apologize for that. That's often bureaucratic mumble jumble for not wanting to say anything. In this case, that's truly not the case, that we do need to respect the families, we need to respect the patients. What I can provide for you is that the new information came to light last night that raised questions with the healthcare professionals. In turn, they were able to positively identify Xavier LaBelle as Xavier LaBelle, who of course we had previously thought was Parker Tobin. So with that new information, that identification was made, and of course all the other processes fell into place after that. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, and if I may, are all the individuals in the accident at one hospital? Are they all located in one hospital?
I don't have that level of detail at this time. I know 2 were taken to one hospital. Originally, 2 were taken to one hospital in Saskatoon and the rest to another. I'm not sure if those patients have been transferred, and it really wouldn't be my place to make comment on that.
Apologies, and one more follow-up. As far as Xavier LaBelle is concerned, was he in critical condition or just, I guess, injured, or what were the extent of his injuries?
Again, because Mr. LaBelle is an active patient in the system, I'm not able to comment on the extent of the injuries. What I can say is, that we want to thank both his family and Mr. Tobin's family for their understanding, for their their level of professionalism that's been provided with this recent news, of course, being delivered, as well as to the to the whole Humboldt Broncos organization and the city of Humboldt and others.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else on the phone?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Hi, this is Mary Tate from the Globe and Mail. Again, sorry, I was one of the ones who couldn't hear anything, so I'm sure you've answered this, so apologies for that.
I apologize for
how the first identification happened. Was the family involved in identification?
It's a process that's followed, and the first piece of that is to get a list of who the perceived survivors are, and who the perceived victims are, and from there start to make those determinations. And so the coroner would have begun the process of identifying those that had deceased. Off the basis of some of that information, they were able to use some other community resources that were available, that were familiar with these individuals. And then from there, yes, the families would have been a part of that process. So it is a process that's undertaken and followed quite closely.
So had Xavier's family, like a next of kin, identified his body?
The family would have been involved in the identification process, yes. In terms of the finality of that and where that was, it's not. I can't comment on that right now, but what I can confirm for you is that they would have been involved in the process, yes.
Does involved mean they saw the body and said, yes, this is our son?
Again, as I've said, I can confirm that they were involved in the process. They were able to be at the, the terminology I use in this is difficult, and I don't want to sound, I don't want to sound flippant, but the makeshift morgue that we had set up in Saskatoon, they were able to attend there as all their families were on Saturday afternoon. In terms of the level of conversation and what went from there, I'm not at liberty to provide that. But yes, they were involved in the identification of their son.
And can you say, sort of just to clarify, when you talk about they, who is they?
Again, the family. Out of respect for the family, I won't list which family members were involved.
And was Parker's family, the Parker family, ever involved in saying whether their son was alive or otherwise?
It's safe to say that all of the families have been involved in the process, yes. That all of the families have been, fully aware. And again, our thoughts and concerns go out to those families because, number one, they're dealing with some incredibly difficult situations. And number two, this recent news, I think especially the two families affected, especially Parker's family, but also all of the other family members too. I mean, this is not easy news for them to digest.
Sorry, just to clarify, for Parker's family, was there somebody at the hospital, perhaps Xavier, if I understand right, who they believed was their son for a couple of days?
It wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment where Parker's family was or wasn't in the process, but what I can tell you is that the family was involved, yes. And I know that sounds like sidestepping the question, but I'm just not able to directly answer it because of patient safety, patient security, and patient information. And I'm sorry about that. I do understand the challenges associated with that for you.
Okay, just to clarify, was somebody of Parker's next of kin at the hospital?
Parker's family, my understanding is, has been in Saskatoon, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Anyone else on the phone? Okay, folks, thanks. We're going to wrap this up then.